Alle dere velkommen til dette seminaret i dag. Vi i LDO glade for at vi har klart å samle til dette seminaret mennesker som har erfaring med tvang, beslutningstakere og helsebyråkrater, kontrollkommisjoner, forskere fra ulike profesjoner, psykiatere og psykologer, jurister og ikke minst representanter fra tvangslovutvalget. Denne bredden viser at dagen i dag tar opp aktuelle spørsmål for veldig mange. Og på vegne av Likestillings- og diskrimineringsombudet så vil jeg spesielt ønske dr. Michelle Funk fra Verdens helseorganisasjon velkommen. Tema for denne dagen retten til selvbestemmelse i ulike former for helse- og omsorgstjenester. Det et grunnleggende prinsipp i alle tjenester fra spesialhelsetjenesten og fra kommunene. Vi har stilt spørsmålet: hvordan kan vi oppnå mest mulig selvbestemmelse i psykisk helsevern og i tjenester til personer med utviklingshemming? Dette et stort tema. Vi har derfor valgt å sette særlig søkelys på tvangsmedisinering etter psykisk helsevernloven og tvang overfor personer med utviklingshemming for å ivareta grunnleggende behov. Med dette seminaret så ønsker vi å belyse innholdet i retten til selvbestemmelse i konvensjonen for mennesker med nedsatt funksjonsevne. Vi vet at dagens regelverk og praksis innebærer mange vanskelige avveininger, og at de som jobber i tjenesten og klagemekanismene daglig står overfor vanskelige valg. Samtidig så vet vi også hva tvang kan føre til for dem som utsettes for det. Ombudet har tilsynsansvar med konvensjonen om rettigheter til mennesker med nedsatt funksjonsevne. Vårt mandat innebærer å fremme en praksis som medfører mest mulig selvbestemmelse for de av oss som har behov for helsehjelp, enten det i psykiatrien eller i tjenesten til mennesker med utviklingshemming. For oss det avgjørende å bringe sammen de personene som har menneskerettigheter som sitt ekspertområde, og de fagfolkene som daglig jobber med faglig forsvarlig helsehjelp. Og i dag så vil vi høre innlegg fra mennesker som har opplevd tvang, representanter fra sivilt samfunn, forskere og fagpersoner, om alternativer til tvangsmedisinering i psykiatrien og alternativer til tvang for å ivareta grunnleggende menneskerettigheter for folk med utviklingshemming. Ombudet har levert til FN-komiteen vår rapport som overvåker konvensjonen. Vårt mandat å overvåke konvensjonen, og vi har levert til FN-komiteen vår rapport om situasjonen for mennesker med nedsatt funksjonsevne i Norge. Den leverte vi i 2015. Der etterlyser vi blant annet ny tvangslovgivning som i større grad ivaretar retten til selvbestemmelse og frihet fra tvang. Jeg derfor glad for at helseministeren har satt ned et lovutvalg som skal gå gjennom tvangsreglene i helse- og omsorgssektoren. Utvalget skal levere sin innstilling høsten 2018. Det skjer samtidig som Norge skal eksamineres for FN-komiteen. Vi håper at dette seminaret skal bidra til å gi lovutvalget viktige innspill i det arbeidet som gjøres, og også belyse dagsaktuelle problemstillinger som ombudet kan ta med seg videre i den jobben vi gjør hver dag, og i den eksaminasjonen vi skal ha av Norge, eller bidra til av Norge, som skal skje i FN. Så da vil jeg bare få til å ønske alle et godt seminar, og igjen ønske alle velkommen. Og så skal jeg gi ordet til dagens konferansier, som professor Jan Fridtjof Bernt. Vær så god.
Ja, god morgen alle sammen, og vel møtt. Jeg heter altså Jan Fridtjof Bernt, og såkalt professor emeritus ved Universitetet i Bergen. Det betyr at en professor som synes han har det så mye å gjøre at han ikke vil gå hjem etter pensjonsalderen. Og av de ting jeg har arbeidet med i mange år, har jo blant annet vært de problemene som vi her skal diskutere i dag. Vi får nesten få lov til å nevne det, at jeg tror ikke så mange som har så lang tid bakover kan se så langt bakover i dette som meg. Jeg satt i sin tid i et lovutvalg som avga innstilling i 1988 om tvang i psykiatrien, og vi fortsetter å diskutere dette. Det illustrerer jo at dette store temaer. Det tema hvor reformer vanskelig, både faglig og politisk kanskje, og det illustrerer at vi har et område hvor ulike typer etiske hensyn kolliderer på en sånn måte at det ofte veldig vanskelig å slå seg på brystet og si at jeg har alle argumentene på min side, men hvor diskusjonen er desto viktigere. Det betyr også at det seminaret som jeg synes det er allerede storartet at Likestillingsombudet her har tatt initiativ til, det er et veldig viktig bidrag. Ikke fordi at vi i dag tror at vi skal komme ut av døren med løsningene i lommen, men fordi at dette er så alvorlige og viktige, både etiske og faglige problemer, at det fortjener mer oppmerksomhet, mer gjennomgående diskusjon, og kanskje også da noen nye perspektiver. Som da i særlig grad er kommet inn nettopp ved dette likestillingsaspektet, som jo er knyttet både til denne konvensjonen for funksjonshemmedes rettigheter, CRPD, for de av oss som er flinke til å lære forkortelser, og også ved at den europeiske menneskerettighetsdomstol også har begynt å røre på seg litt når det gjelder likestilling og diskriminering. Og altså et nytt perspektiv på dette, og ikke spørsmål lenger bare er tvang, men også spørsmål om hvordan man så å si skiller ut de gruppene som skal kunne utsettes for tvang, og i hvilken utstrekning det er akseptabelt at det er særregler for bestemte grupper som øker tvangsfullmaktene og tvangspotensialet i forhold til det som gjelder til oss alle oss andre. Dette blir en spennende dag, det blir en tett dag, og jeg skal være møteleder og prøve å holde dette innenfor stramme rammer, og vi får bare be om at vi alle sammen har tålmodighet med hverandre, for tidsrammen er ikke ubegrenset, men jeg tror det kan bli en veldig spennende og interessant dag. Og til å starte dette seminaret i dag, så har vi vært så heldige å få dr. Michelle Funk, som arbeider i Verdens helseorganisasjon i Genève, hvor hun er koordinator for Mental Health Policy and Service Development, og blant annet, står det her hos meg, har ansvaret for etablering av WHOs arbeid med psykisk helse og menneskerettigheter. Det oppfatter da igjen som et tegn på at tingene rører på seg, ting skjer både på den internasjonale og nasjonale arena, og at vi nå er i en prosess som vi både skal prøve å følge nøye, og kanskje også prøve å være på vår måte der vi er, og bidra til å skyve i riktig retning inn på vår egen arena. Så derfor altså dr. Michelle Funk, som da vil gi oss et innlegg om rett til frihet og selvbestemmelse, om status for oppfyllelsen av retten til selvbestemmelse, og hva statene kan gjøre for å oppfylle denne retten. Dr. Michelle Funk, please.
I'm just wondering if we could just put it on the title page for a while, the slide. Oh, I can do that, sorry. I can do that. It's just that it was already there. Okay, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really grateful for the invitation from the Equality and Anti-Discrimination Ombudsman to speak on behalf of WHO at this seminar on the use of force in health and social care. So thank you again for this information. For the invitation. I'm here because I believe that it's really important to see practices change in mental health in Norway, and I'm here because I believe that it's possible for the practices to change. In my presentation, I'm going to be talking about the situation that I see in mental health, and then I'm going to be discussing the context, the situation of mental health in the context of the International Human Rights Framework. And then I'm going to move on to discuss the WHO Quality Rights Initiative, which is outlining key resources and also the key actions that countries can take in order to end coercive practices in mental health and to promote autonomy and self-determination. So, what do I see? Countries around the world are not providing the kinds of mental health services and supports that people find useful and helpful for their recovery. And in many instances, they're doing the opposite. So we're all most likely in this room familiar with the situation. In the healthcare context, people experience violence, abuse, neglect, coercion. People are given very disempowering messages that take away their hope and dignity. For example, that they should stop their education, that they should not get married, they should think twice about having children, that they're not capable of making decisions for themselves, and that they should not have hopes and goals, because if they fail to achieve what they want to achieve, that it's going to lead to a relapse in their condition. So these are very common situations and scenarios that we see happening in the mental health context, in the context of the services. And in the community, we also see that people are actively discriminated in education, in access to housing, in employment, and access to social services. We see guardianship laws in many countries severely restricting people's rights to make decisions on all aspects of their lives, so about their treatment, about how they spend their money, about where they live, and so on. So basically it was in this context, that the Quality Rights Initiative was created in order to push forward a human rights-based approach in mental health, and to start looking at all the sort of rights protections that we need to introduce for people with psychosocial, intellectual, and cognitive disabilities. And I also say in this context, people with mental health conditions, because I think there's different terminology which is being used by different groups, professionals, civil society, and different terminology being used in different countries. And I don't want terminology to get, to interfere with people's understanding. So we're talking about, people who are being diagnosed with a mental health condition, if that's the terminology that you're used to, or we're talking with people with psychosocial disabilities, intellectual and cognitive disabilities. But we need to be introducing a human rights-based approach for all these different groups. So now to the International Human Rights Framework. In particular, I want to focus on the UN CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which essentially informs the vision, the objectives, and the actions of the Quality Rights Initiative. As we know, the CRPD outlines a full range of rights that need to be promoted for people with disabilities. However, I'm going to focus on a few critical rights which are particularly important in the mental health context, and also which fundamentally change the status quo in this area. So the first right is the right to legal capacity outlined in Article 12 of the CRPD. And this article requires that people with psychosocial disabilities be allowed to exercise their legal capacity on an equal basis with everyone else. In other words, people have the right to make decisions about their treatment matters, their financial decisions, personal affairs, where they want to live, and so on. And it's important here to note that a common misunderstanding about this article is the confusion between decision-making capacity and legal capacity. And I think that's caused a lot of tension and conflict between the different actors. These are two very different things. So the CRPD acknowledges that people's decision-making capacity can be greatly affected in different scenarios. For example, when people are in a crisis, people's decision-making can be affected, and that applies to everyone. But the CRPD is saying, yes, although someone's decision-making capacity can be affected, it doesn't mean that we can take away their legal capacity. They must still retain their legal capacity to make decisions. And so the CRPD is looking at different ways to support people to make decisions. So basically, that's why, in acknowledgement that people's decision-making capacity can be impaired, that's why Article 12 of the CRPD specifically introduces the notion of supported decision-making. So this is completely different from guardianship and other substitute decision-making models that are in place in most European and other countries. So in supported decision-making, the person with a disability remains at the center of all decisions that are being made. And it's the obligation of the country to make sure that people are provided with supports to make their choices and decisions. But only, again, and I stress that, if the person would like support. There are lots of different models of supported decision-making which are emerging in different parts of the world. Probably you are already familiar with some of these. For example, the personal ombud system service in Sweden, which is often quoted as a very good example of supported decision-making, and also open dialogue in Finland. Now, let me move to a second very important right, which is the right to liberty and security of the person, which is set out in Article 14 of the CRPD. And this right means that people can no longer be admitted into hospitals, into the services against their will. And this is really important because it's basically calling to an end to the situation where people are involuntarily detained against their expressed informed consent. The Quality Rights Initiative and its guidance materials, which I'll be introducing you to, show how we can respect Articles 12 and 14 of the CRPD through mechanisms such as advanced directives and supported decision-making. We do have the tools to make sure that Articles 12 and 14 can happen in reality. The third important right that we need to highlight in the context of this discussion is the right to live independently and be included in the community. And this article states that people with psychosocial disabilities must be able to decide where and with whom they live, and they must not be obliged to live in any particular living arrangement. This article also requires a full range of community-based services be established, not only in the areas of health, but in social welfare, housing, employment, and education, so that people can gain the skills, the income, and the supports that they need to live meaningful lives in the community. And here the emphasis is on meaningful lives and full integration. And then finally, another key right is the right to health, which essentially requires that people with psychosocial disabilities are provided with the same range, quality, and standard of care as everyone else, and that these be provided on the basis of free and informed consent. So these rights, along with all the other rights outlined in the CRPD, form the basis of the WHO Quality Rights Initiative. And now I'd like to move forward a little bit to just discuss how Quality Rights is working to end coercion, violence and abuse, and how it's working to promote autonomy and self-determination. So WHO Quality Rights is taking action in 5 interrelated areas. It's looking at building capacity to understand and promote human rights in mental health. It's looking at creating community-based services and supports that respect and promote rights. And it's looking at improving some of the services that are already in existence, so improving the quality and the human rights conditions of the existing inpatient and outpatient mental health services and supports. It's also looking at building a movement and supporting, rather, the development of a strong civil society movement to conduct advocacy and influence policy making, particularly, again, with the ultimate goal, introducing a human rights-based approach in mental health, and then, importantly, reforming national policies and laws in line with the CRPD and other international human rights standards. So, as I said, the first objective is really focused on building capacity to understand and promote human rights and a recovery-based approach, which is really important to what we're trying to achieve with quality rights. And something that we've definitely learned from experience is that the level of knowledge and understanding of human rights is really low in the mental health services and in this area. And that is, we've seen that, you know, in all countries. Every time we go to a country and we're talking to people, there's really a lack of knowledge about what does it really mean to protect and promote human rights in the context of mental health in very practical ways. Basically, the CRPD as well is unheard of when you actually get down to the sort of ground level where people are working. You know, the people are not only are they not aware of what they need to do from themselves in terms of promoting rights, but they're completely unaware that the government has obligations as well for promoting rights. So it's really only through raising awareness and building knowledge of a range of different stakeholders on human rights that we're going to be able to get sustainable change. And here we're looking at a number of different groups. If we're going to be successful, we need to be building capacity and knowledge and changing skills and practices of health practitioners, mental health practitioners, of course, people with psychosocial disability, family members and care partners, policymakers, DPOs, NGOs and other stakeholders. So it's really good if you're going to have a system level change, you have to reach all the different stakeholders. And as part of this area of work, we've recently published a set of 9 face-to-face training modules. And these training modules first help to build capacity on rights, and secondly, they help to develop the skills to put these rights into practice. And this is the first time that we have a set of tools that show how the CRPD and other human rights standards can be practically implemented on the ground in the area of mental health. The materials recognize that real change requires more than an incremental increase in knowledge. It requires a fundamental shift in mentality. So you can do education and you can get a bit of an improvement, and you know, you get a lot of improvement in knowledge and you can get some changes, you know, in skills and practices. But if you change people's mentality, you see huge changes in practices, and that's what we want to achieve, and that's what we are seeing happening with the capacity building that we're doing in quality rights in different countries. The modules have been developed in collaboration with more than 100 national and international actors, including disabled people's organisations, NGOs, people with lived experience, family and care partners and mental health professionals. And I think this is what really makes a difference as well between these materials and then a lot of other materials that we've developed and that I personally have been involved in. The inputs of all the different stakeholders have really shaped the materials for the better. And we're also receiving even more feedback about their use in close to 25 countries by early next year in order to make the definitive versions available by mid-2018. We have used the materials even in the very first version, iteration number 1. We're now up to iteration number 3, and we had huge impact in terms of attitudinal change and practice change. And we had that even just over the course of a 3-day workshop. From people not being able to see another way to practice their mental health, to the nurses in training workshops going back to their facility service, unlocking the locked ward that had been locked for years. And then realizing, hey, this actually works and nothing terrible is happening here. So these training materials are not just good ideas, they're based on the international human rights standards, and they've been shown to be highly effective. Here on this slide, I've just listed the different topic areas that are covered. So on the left-hand side, you can see 6 core modules that are looking at mental health and human rights. There are 2 core modules, so understanding human rights and then promoting human rights and mental health. And then another 4 more specific focus modules about applying that in the service context. And then on the right-hand side, we go into much more depth about some of the key issues around promoting a recovery-based approach, which is really complementary to human rights. Promoting recovery-based approaches using all the human rights concepts and ideas. What's added value to recovery is that it's saying this is based in international human rights law. So it actually gives a recovery approach a lot more strength from that perspective. We have a specialized module on realizing supported decision-making and advanced planning, which really provides so many, and I must say all the answers to the difficulties that are raised by, particularly by professionals in the area of mental health. What are we going to do if someone's not well and they're refusing treatment? Are we just going to leave them to die? You know, we have an obligation to help. So supported decision-making and advanced planning can deal with the toughest of toughest issues. And of course, the other specialized module is on implementing strategies to end the use of seclusion and restraints and other coercive practices. This is a practice which is just accepted in, you know, in our area, in mental health. It's accepted as a standard practice that just has to happen. If you get people thinking about what's happening and the negative impact of using seclusion and restraint in terms of the impact on the person, the relationship, which is then the therapeutic relationship, which is then destroyed, and then introduce really practical strategies that can be used, then, yeah, you can get massive changes, and this is what this module is trying to, which is able to achieve. All right, moving on. In order to maximize reach, we've already translated the core training modules into an e-training platform. And one key feature of this e-training is that we provide expert coaches and mentors online 5 days a week to provide guidance to users throughout the training. So this is really a unique feature that we've thought very important. If you're moving from face-to-face training to e-training, I mean, part of what you lose with face-to-face training and the traditional e-training is that sort of personalized, individualized support. So we've introduced that component into our e-training platform. Another key feature is that it includes peer-to-peer learning through online discussions, enabling users from countries around the world to share their knowledge, experience, and expertise. And through this e-training, we will be able to reach, engage, and train many more people within a shorter period of time and at much lower cost than would have been possible through face-to-face training alone. And so here we're talking about reaching thousands of people within countries and across countries. As part of the piloting of this e-training, we undertook a pre-post training evaluation to look at its impact on attitudinal change, and we had huge positive shifts in attitudes. We found changes and issues around the need to end forced treatment and coercion, the right of people to self-determination and legal capacity, the need to provide people with choice and information about treatment options, not just propose medication as a solution, and also changes in attitudes around the use of seclusion and restraint and the need to find alternatives to these practices. All right, I'll just move on to the second objective and the area of work which is really crucial to the initiative. And this is around creating community-based services and supports that respect and promote human rights in line with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And traditionally by community-based mental health services, WHO has referred to outpatient clinics, mental health units in general hospitals, mental health interventions delivered through primary care. But what I want to emphasize is that community community-based mental health services and supports that are respecting the international human rights standards need to be more than just mental health services based, located in the community. They need to actually contribute to independent living and community inclusion, and here choice is really critical. And the point, just to keep in mind, is that these traditional services that I've just mentioned don't necessarily promote this choice and inclusion. So to support the transformation of mental health services so that they promote these critical areas, we're currently at the start of developing a best practice guide. And this guide is going to identify, describe, and provide evaluation data for good, promising, and emerging community-based mental health services and supports that operate without coercion, that are responsive to people's needs, that support recovery and promote autonomy and inclusion. There are many services out there that are compliant with the CRPD, but the problem is that they remain on the margins. And most policy makers and health practitioners are simply not aware of them. So some examples I've already mentioned: the personal ombuds service in Sweden, there's the open dialogue in Finland, Soteria houses, circles of support, and some innovative home support services. These are the more well-known ones, but actually as we begin this project and we go in deeper, there are some really amazing and exciting services out there that meet all the criteria we would like to see happen in mental health. But again, as I mentioned, they're on the periphery. So showing that these innovative type services, that they exist and that they are effective, is going to be key to inspiring policymakers and other key actors to take action and to spread new and innovative approaches to mental health across the world. And this is why this area of work is really crucial as part of the Quality Rights Initiative. One of the factors that all these different services have in common is that they are delivered by people with lived experience themselves. In other words, one, not the only important element, but one important element is that of peer support. And which plays a big part in making the services effective, helpful, and acceptable to people. And so, as a part of this area of work, we've already developed 2 guidance modules in this area, one around developing and putting in place individualized peer support within the services and within the community. So someone with lived experience and who's worked through their own recovery, who wishes to help other people, are able to do that to someone who may be at a much earlier stage. And then, of course, group peer support as well. So these are 2 elements that we think are pretty important in the way forward, is to really invest in promoting peer support, as well as some of the other innovative services that are coming through. But I think we should always be aware of these services, innovative services, being co-opted within a traditional system of mental health without changing that mentality, because that's where you can actually take some really great services and ideas and put them in a different context, a more traditional context which isn't compliant with the CRPD, and then you have the problem that these services are not functioning in their intended way and won't have the impact that you would have liked. So that's really critical. The third objective is to improve the quality of care and improve the quality of care and human rights conditions of existing inpatient and outpatient services. What needs to be very clear here, though, that this objective is not about improving institutions, and it's really important to be clear. So institutions or hospitals, whether large or small, should be closed down. That is the policy direction which WHO has been stating for some time, and we re-emphasize that again. And the aim of quality rights is not to invest in building institutions or to fix them, but rather to establish acceptable alternative services and supports, the services that I mentioned just earlier. But of course, we should never abandon people in institutions during the transition to community-based services. In other words, we need to make sure that their rights are not being violated during this transition phase. And we also need to acknowledge that there are some good services that exist, inpatient and outpatient services that are important, and we don't have to just throw everything away, but we do need to look at what we can do to improve those services. So we have some services, hey, they're okay, there needs to be some improvement, we can do that. And then, but at the same time, as I was saying earlier, we need to completely introduce some new services as well. But we should never have institutions or think of improving the institutions. So that's a mess, even if they are small and situated in the community. So we just keep in mind all the principles. It's not just about being located in communities. So if we're looking at improving existing services, that's important. We need to have the tools to do that. And this is why we developed the Quality Rights Assessment Toolkit, which outlines the standards to be achieved in mental health services and also helps guide countries on how to measure this. The areas covered in the toolkit are actually mapping on to a number of the key areas in the CRPD and the issues that are particularly important in the mental health field. So we need to, in terms of the actual services, we need to be looking at the social and the physical environment. I put social first because that tends to be forgotten. So it's not just the physical aspects of the service in good quality, but is there good interaction between all the people in the service, between the staff, the people using the service, are there opportunities? Are people showing respect, upholding people's dignity? Do they have, if you're in an inpatient service, do people have the opportunity to, to exercise, to have the freedom to have their own personal space and so on? Then the second area is whether the service is promoting a recovery-based approach and addressing the physical health needs of people, not just the mental health needs. And we know that's really important because many people are dying early and it's because of physical health needs that are neglected. We also have the direct negative effects of medications as well, which are also contributing to that. In the toolkit's looking at whether the service is free from violence, coercion and abuse, whether it's promoting independent living and inclusion in the community. So that's the assessment toolkit, which we developed some years ago. And many countries have gone on to assess their services with the toolkit, and we have a lot of information about that if you're interested. But some recent developments are that we've just developed a new dedicated module, which is looking at improving and transforming services once an assessment has been undertaken. So it's really looking at addressing the quality and the human rights gaps as a result of that quality rights assessment. And some of the issues that we're addressing in the service change tool are looking and changing the service culture, which is really critical to having a different type of service, and looking at collaboratively with all the different stakeholders, developing a new vision for the service. And then, of course, identifying very specific priorities for change based on that assessment that has been undertaken. The fourth objective is looking at supporting the strengthening of a civil society movement to influence a human rights-based approach in mental health. Having an organised movement can be critical to making key differences in mental health, raising awareness, lobbying policymakers. But many countries don't have very powerful advocacy groups. So the Quality Rights Initiative is really trying to develop that movement, support the development of that movement in order to promote a human rights-based approach. And we've developed 2 guidance materials that can help countries in Norway and other countries help strengthen civil society movement. So setting up group organizations and also conducting advocacy. They're available on the internet, and again, final revisions will be available mid-next year. And then let me just talk a little bit about the 5th objective, which is to reform national policies and laws in line with the CRPD. Prior to coming in force of the CRPD, we had developed some guidance around policy and law based on the international human rights standards that existed at that time. And I don't know, some of you may be familiar with the Mental Health Policy and Service Guidance Package. And also, some of you may be familiar with the WHO Resource Book on Mental Health, Human Rights and Law, which we developed in 2005. Just so everyone in this room is aware, we've officially withdrawn this guidance because it really was based on the standards prior to the coming into force of the CRPD, and it contains provisions around involuntary admission and treatment, and the use of seclusion and restraints, and how to regulate these in practice, instead of provisions around promoting legal capacity and ending forced treatment. And this is why it was so important to withdraw this from as a key guidance. So basically, we need to replace this current guidance with new CRPD compliant guidance for policy and law. This is the type of guidance that countries are now coming to us and asking for, and we are responding to these requests for assistance on a one-to-one basis with countries. However, we are also at the stage where we really need to think of replacing the guidance, the WHO Resource Book, with another document, another tool that can help guide countries on a large scale. I mean, we had great success with the Resource Book because many countries are referring to it in developing the laws, but it's too much success, so we have to now sort of get that guidance out of people's heads, introduce a new way forward. So we really do need to develop that new tool. And then hopefully that new tool, which introduces new provisions for promoting the CRPD and other international human rights standards, will have as much impact as our older guidance did, and that will be able to make a positive difference in this field in relation to mental health law. So I just want to end by saying that we will never be able to provide the services that people want to use and that they find helpful unless we address head-on the use of, violence and coercive practices in the mental health services. And I really firmly believe that we have a way forward, and we have the tools through Quality Rights and through some other initiatives. We have the way to make this happen. So I'm hoping that this seminar is going to, contribute to the movement and the discussions going on to actually make the changes, the practices on the ground happen. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Funk, for a most interesting, uplifting and inspiring presentation. as we are going to come back to the whole seminar today, we will find that we always end up in situations where we have problems with the different kinds of capacity and knowledge we need in order to discuss these issues properly. The professional side, the legal side, and the policy side. And I find that particularly the things you are doing now on the professional side may turn out to be extremely important, because it also proves both the necessity and the possibilities to reduce the use of coercion. But it also points out that there may not be such a high level of increasing costs doing this, because rechanging the systems, the organization, the way you do the treatment may just lead to a situation where it's much easier to achieve the goals you want to do and to use less resources on using coercion in order to keep everything in order. This is a very important contribution to our discussion, which we are going to come back to through the discussions today, and which I also think will be an immense important background for our further work with this field. So thank you very much, Dr. Funk, and a very small token from us, to you from us.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
And according to my watch, we have about 3 minutes for very basic, simple questions. If anyone wants to have any points clarified, we are not going into the discussion on these issues. That's something we will try to do a little later on. But is there anything you want to have clarified from Dr. Funk before we go on to the first break? No? And then, Dr. Funk, I hope we will have access to your presentation on the net afterwards, so we can study it. It was so useful. So again, thank you very much. Og da skal vi ha vår første 10 minutters pause, og dette er et prøveløp som da skal vise at alle kan respektere at 10 minutter er grensen.